We're making good progress on this red project car. We've put the boot back together, most of it anyway. We haven't quite finished lining the boot up, and we obviously haven't done any body work like getting rid of this masking tape. We've got the horseshoe lid on. This is off the parts car here. We're just waiting for some foam to trim that, but we'll do that later. There's some broken cables inside here, but the soft top mechanism is now bolted in there, but we do have to do some work on that. But what I'd like to do is start on these doors. Now, somewhere in England there's boxes of parts for this car, but they're certainly not in this garage, because these doors have absolutely nothing in them. They have no door glass, no door cards, no hardware, they have nothing. Everything we're going to need, or at least most of the expensive parts that we're going to need, are actually going to be on this parts car here, and this video is going to be all about how to remove the door card and transplant all the things from this car over to our project car. Once we've done that, we're then going to set about changing all the seals on the project car. First thing we're going to do, if you've got manual windows on your car, is take this handle off. Now, I've seen so many of these damaged because people do not know how to take the handle off. So I've already loosened it, but it's much easier to show you how this goes on once you've taken it off. The only thing holding the handle on is this outer piece of trim here. Once you've taken that off, the handle will just slide off. There's a little plastic gasket here, and there's this chrome piece here. Let me show you the actual trim piece. Okay, you'll see it's larger at the top than at the bottom, and that basically hooks over a loop, a ridge in here. Okay, so to get this off, you have to push this downwards. Okay, if the handle is on this way here, this has to be pushed down like that, down, and then it will come off. And it's only held on by these two clips here at the bottom. If you just try and lever it off without first moving this down, you'll just end up damaging it. There are two screws holding this here on. One is under this trim piece here, which clips off, and one is under this handle here. If you feel under there, you'll feel a hole, and the screw goes in at an angle. But before we take those two off, there are three pieces of trim we need to get off before we can get the door cards off here. One is here, one is here, one is here. Now all of these screws are going to be rusted, and there's a very, very good chance that we're going to end up rounding them off or snapping them off. This screw here is completely rounded and rusted, so I'm just working in some plus gas WD-40, and I'm hoping that this one is going to come out. You can see how rusty that fitting is. We actually need that for the other car, so we're going to have to de-rust that. But you can see I'm just going backwards and forwards, and I think we've just about got this one now. It took quite a while to get that screw out, but you will find that patience pays off, because to drill those screws out is a real effort. To get to the screw under here, you need to just wedge this piece of chrome away, and that reveals the Phillips screw behind. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to undo that. They're not usually too rusty. Once you've got that screw off, you should be able to just take this out. It's difficult to do it with one hand. You need to open the door like that, and it should just slide off like so. This other screw that's hidden under here, you have to go in at an angle like so. They're not normally that rusted, and they normally come out okay. Once you've undone those two screws, you should find that you can start to wiggle this loose. Now there is one last catch on that end. I'm going to do this with two hands. Okay, we managed to get that door card off in one piece. You can see it's all pretty rusty here, but we're going to need to clean out all of these little fittings and de-rust them and put them in the other car, because as I say, there's nothing on that car. Now, as suspected, all of the screws are here rusted solid, so we're going to need to drill these out to get these chrome plates off, but you can just about get the door card off without doing that. So let's have a closer look at this door card. We managed to get it off without breaking any of these clips here. There's a plastic hook here at the end that often gets broken off because people try and yank this thing without lifting it first. These are all quite rusty. It's quite possible that we might have to make up another one of these door cards, or try to make up another one. It's quite difficult because of these little metal fittings up here, but we might try and give it a go. You can see that these fittings here, which are attached to the top of the door, they slide into special clips that we'll see more of when we come to redo the scraper seals. Now that we've got the door card off, the next thing we're going to do is take off this locking mechanism and all the rods. We're going to have to de-rust these and restore all of these. And I'm going to film each part in quite a detailed way because I want to make sure I get everything back together exactly as it came off. So first thing is these 3 screws off. Once you've got these 3 screws out, make a note of the fact they've got a washer. These rods should just pop out of those plastic clips. There's one more slotted screw to undo here before we can take this whole mechanism off. This screw's not coming out, so rather than risk rounding the head, because we're going to need all of this mechanism, I'm just going to unclip these things here, blast them with WD-40 or some kind of penetrant, and then take this off. Now, hopefully you won't be dealing with a car this rusty, and you'll just be able to pop a screwdriver in and undo these screws to get this all to pieces. But there's no such luck with this car. So if you are struggling to get the screws out, just before you start trying to round them off with a screwdriver, and then you'll basically ruin them and have to drill them out, try using a screwdriver bit and then putting a 6.5mm socket on there, and then using a wrench to get that off. Or you can also use an impact wrench or impact driver to sort of give it some vibration to try and shake the rust loose. And what I normally do is just bash on the end of that a few times with a rubber mallet to see if I can break the rust, and then use a socket just to see if I can break it free that way. There we go. It's taken a long time to get that screw. Jeez. If you ever find that your door handle is stiff, any of these are stiff and they're not springing back, it's often because these rods, they get corroded and they slide through these plastic runners here. So it's just a matter of lubricating the plastic runners. As you can see, these are actually seized solid in there because the lock hasn't been used for so long. We're going to have to take this piece of glass out the top, and in order to do that I think I need to remove all the scraper seals up here. So these are just going to leave off. They're just clipped on like so. We're going to keep this here though, because the new seals we need to cut them to size, and we'll use exactly this as a template to cut them. You know exactly where that comes up to. To get the inner scraper seal out, we've got to take this piece of trim off here. There are 2 bolts holding in the wiper mechanism. The top bolt has a spring washer first and then another washer. They're longer than the bolts holding in this. The bottom washer did not seem to have, so the bottom bolt did not seem to have that second washer on it for some reason. 2 bolts that come out of here, they're the same length as the ones that hold the mirror on up here, but they've got a large washer and then a smaller spring washer. When you come to take this bolt here out, has a large washer first and then a spring washer, and on the other end of it is this green guide. It's going to basically stop the window at a certain height. Similarly, when you come to undo this bolt here, just make a note, there's another one of those little green spaces there. Make a note of which way it goes around, which way it's angled before you undo it. You may have to hold on to that with a pair of pliers. Now, these green stops, which basically are adjustable and bolt in up here, the idea is that they stop the window going above a certain height. Okay, so this green stop is basically, as the window goes up, this piece here will hit the bottom of it. It allows you to have some adjustment just so you can get the window exactly right. Taking them out for some other reason other than dismantling the whole door, you might just want to make a note of exactly where in the slot that is, so that when you put it back, say if you were replacing a broken bit of glass, you'd have a pretty good idea of the start. Here. Once again, big washer on the outside, spring washer on the inside. Should be 3 of these, same as these 2 here. Little brackets at the bottom, once again with a bolt, spring washer, large washer. Attaching here, they actually hold this glass, this bottom fitting, and there's one on each side, one here and one here. And when we take those 2 off, we should in theory be able to slide the glass out. The back one of these is slightly different, just with a bolt and one washer. It's probably because it's been off before and just not put back on correctly. There's actually 4 bolts you need to do along the bottom, 1 on each end and 2 in the middle. That's the 4th bolt there. It's got a big washer on it, and then the glass should lift right out. I have to do some car juggling because I can't get this door open wide enough to get the glass out. Now hopefully that glass should just lift straight out. And there we have the window glass. There's 4 bolts to remove along the bottom. This window probably not seen the light of day for 10-20 years, something like that. And the window is just slotted into this rubber groove here, but we'll have to remove that because we'll be refurbishing, stripping all the rust off this, repainting it, then putting it back together. Get this off the glass. I've just tapped it with a rubber mallet, and eventually that comes off like so. Once you've got the glass out of here, the rubber should just pull out. Now I suspect originally that's bonded in, or it may just be rusted in, but we'll have to see about whether they do these parts new that may be too rusty to save, and whether they do these rubber profiles new as well. But we'll take that out so we can get a better look. It's the next day, and it transpires that this part here and this rubber section here actually comes as part of the side window from Mercedes, and it's about £400, and unfortunately this is no longer available either from Mercedes or from the SL shop as a separate part. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try and restore this, and we'll go along to some glazing companies and see if we can find some rubber with this profile. So as I say, this part is not available anymore, and it's super duper expensive if you need to get it from Mercedes because it comes with the window attached. We're going to try and pull this whole mirror fitting up out of the car. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to take the mirror off first because this little fitting here, which is supposed to slide out and allow us to take this off, is seized. It'll be much easier to unseize it when it's off the car. So I'm going to try and take this whole fitting out now, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but attached to that is a rail down there that we're going to need to take off. It's kind of that thing there. It's a guide for the window, and it's held on by 2 slotted screws, one of which is here. So we're going to just take those off, take the guide off, and that should allow us to pull that straight up through the window. The little grub screws holding that fitting on. So the first screw we had access to this hole. The second screw you can see is going to be access through this hole here. Once you've taken both of those screws out, you should be able to reach in and just take this off. Just remember which way it goes on. The screws holes are facing you, and hopefully there'll be enough rusty marks on the bit that we're taking out to let us know exactly the position. Last but not least, we need to undo that bolt there, and that should allow us to take this whole window mechanism up. Now, to get this mirror out, what you have to do is you have to twist this round by 90 degrees, because if you try and get it out, just pull it straight up, you'll find that this bolt catches on here. So what you have to do is take it to the end here where you've got the thinnest bit, and just twist it like that, and then that should just lift straight out like so. So here's the window sliding mechanism. Once again, it's pretty rusty, so we'll be de-rusting that and restoring that. We'll also be disassembling all of this and cleaning it up. But as I say, at the moment I'm struggling to get that fitting there off. you can see somebody's had a good old go with the wrong tools and gashed it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm keen to avoid that kind of damage to these parts because they are quite expensive. I noticed that lying in the bottom of the car is the other guide or runner for that window, so that could be one reason why the window wouldn't have worked very well on this car. That should be attached to that runner, so we're going to go and attach all the pieces just so we don't lose them, and so while it's fresh in our mind we know exactly how this goes together. This bit must have been off the car for quite some time because there's no obvious markings on here where this should actually go, so we're just going to put it here for the time being. But these rubber channels here, I think they're the same or very similar profile to the other rubber channels, so we're going to go along to a car glazing company and see if we can replace those. We're going to have a go at taking this window regulator out, and it comes out this hole here, so you start getting these edges out and you should find that the rest of it can wiggle the rest of it out like so. Just take that out and have a good look at it. Now these window regulators, they are still available from the SL shop and probably from Mercedes too, but they are super expensive. I think from memory either £200 or £400 or something like that for this mechanism. So what we're going to be doing is very carefully disassembling it. We're going to make a note of any stops like this, so we put them back in exactly the same place. Then we'll be stripping off all the rust, and obviously re-greasing all the rollers and fittings and sliders, etc. Okay, this is interesting. As I'm just going through the rubble in the bottom of this drawer here, I can see broken glass, which means that this window has been replaced, which would account for the fact that some of the washers and spring washers, etc., are missing, and also possibly for why that bottom runner was lying in there. It wasn't attached properly. If you are ever thinking of buying one of these SLs, one of the things to look for is the bottom of the doors. They are a real rust hotspot for these cars, and you can see why when you look in the bottom of this door. There is so much debris, flotsam. In this case, a lot of it is rust, and of course when it rains you'll get water running down the windscreen and running out, and it's supposed to run down drain holes at the bottom, but with this amount of crud in there, those drain holes get blocked, and then you just get water sitting in all of this and rotting the doors out from the bottom. These rods are attached to the lock fitting and to this fitting here with a series of these clips, and the idea is that the clips clip onto the rod like this, and then they'll push away and they'll hinge on through that hole like this one here, and then once you've unclipped you should be able to just lift the rod straight out. Be careful not to lose those clips. Rod just lifts straight out like that, and you should just be able to retrieve that clip which lives just between two pieces of metal there. It would be quite obvious when I come to put this together, but this rod goes in downwards and not upwards. At this end the rod pushes in forwards and does not come from the back. We have to drill the last one of these screws out. When you take this out, be careful not to lose these fittings here, because they're quite specialist fittings. They will allow you to screw through these holes into here without damaging the paintwork. They'll be for them. Similarly, when you take the door catch off, remember to take each one of these fittings out and put them back on here and screw them on so you do not mix up the screws or lose them. When you come to put all of this back together, you can see that they have the telltale signs of the blue thread lock here. This is the fitting that we had to drill out, and they're probably pretty expensive for Mercedes. That little fitting there will probably be a few pounds, so what we'll just do is try and drill that last bit of thread out and save this and just get another screw. This last stubbing fitting won't come out, so I've actually just got a set of mole grips on there. It gives you much more leverage, and I'm hoping that that has now broken free, because once again we want to avoid spending the odd pound here, there and everywhere on specialist screws from Mercedes. So there we go. There we go, we'll pop that in a rust bath and get that looking as good as new. We've almost finished disassembling this door. We've still got to take this guide rail here out, and that's held in by two 5mm Allen bolts, and one here, and there's one lurking under this little plastic cap here. Once again, make sure you don't lose that plastic cap. When you take these out, just don't lose the washer on the end. Leave the video here. That's basically how you disassemble a door. It's going to take several days, if not weeks, to restore each and every part. And once we've done that, we will then put them on the red project car, and that will start looking like a proper Mercedes again.